Who's there? Banana. Banana who? Banana, you glad I didn't say orange? What? Who writes this? I gotta hire some better writers. Hey everyone, it's Tony from the Handlebar Workshops, and we're in the biggest workshop of them all, the great outdoors. Last year I had to redo the siding on my shed. You could almost push your finger straight through the wood siding that was there. So I put up some vinyl siding and some plastic trim, but as you can see, I didn't quite get to the doors. So I need to put up some doors that are going to last, maybe some cedar. That way they can be rot resistant and insect resistant, and hopefully seal it up so I don't get any rodents or any other kind of wildlife inside. Alright, so using the level, we found that the sides were plumb and that the top was level. And then using the carpenter square, we made sure that this corner and this corner were square. So I made some measurements at the top, middle, and bottom. And they were all within a 1/16 of an inch of one another, which is pretty darn good. Then I did some measurements at the left, middle, and the right. And those were a little bit farther out of whack, about 3/16 of an inch, which isn't too bad. It's not that long. I think the bottom, the concrete down at the bottom, is not quite as level as what's at the top. So I can account for that on the bottom of the doors. As long as I know I've got the top and these corners are pretty much square and everything going this way is the right size, I can worry about my bottom at the end. So I bought some 2x cedar lumber to act as the stiles and rails of the door. For the most part, I was able to get some nice sanded 2x, but in order to get the right size, I needed to get, they didn't have enough of the sanded stuff, so I had to get some rough finished cedar as well. I don't want to mix this in, it just won't look right. So I'm going to use the planer, and I'm going to plane off all the roughness here and get it nice and smooth, like this one. This is the board I just ran through the planer. It came out very smooth, very nice. This is the one that was originally bought this way and I haven't touched it with the planer yet. I think I'm just going to leave it though. It's not as nice as this one, but it's going to be outside and it's going to weather. Within 6 months you won't be able to tell the difference anyway. But I do have to say, it smells really good in here. I don't think we have to worry about any moths. Everyone, now we're back inside, getting ready to cut the rails of the doors. The top, the middle, and the bottom were all about the same length, and I want an 1/8 inch gap on the outside and an 1/8 inch gap down the middle. So doing that math, I found they're all within like a 32nd of each other. So I'm just going to set them all up for one cut, one distance here, and cut them that way. To set this distance, I'm using the same tape measure as I did out there. That way I know that the measurements are the same. If I were to switch to my folding rule, this might be slightly off from this, and I don't want to take that chance. I want everything to fit as snugly as possible, but still be able to open up without any issues. For my vertical pieces, the stiles of the doors, they all have to be slightly different sizes. So in order to keep everything straight, I got to label them. I put a piece of green masking tape down here, and I'm just going to write left on this one because this is going to be the one that's on the left side. That way I can keep them straight later down the line. The two middle ones are going to be right next to one another. They're going to be the same length. So I make two of that same length. Now we're going to cut half laps on all of the ends of all of our wood. That way it'll give us a nice strong connection without having to go through a mortise and tendon and digging out mortises and stuff like that. And I can bring you over here and I'll show you how I set it up. So what I have done is I've taken two cutoffs from the boards I'm using, and I'm putting on each side of the bit, and then I take another piece of wood and I hold it right up over the bit here, and then I spin the bit around by hand, making sure everything's unplugged. It's not moving the board, but it's just barely touching. So that's right where we want to be. The idea is I take a board like this, bring in a fence, and then just move the board over the bit, and that'll set my depth, and then I can just back it out and do that. I'm going to have to take, this is a 3/4 inch bit, I'm going to have to raise it up every so often after I cut all the ends. Before I even route a single board that I'm going to use, I'm going to do a bunch of test cuts on the cutoffs that I have. That way I can find the perfect depth of cut, the height of the bit, so that they meet up flush when you put them together at the joint. So some of these longer ones are a bit hard to get up here, and to keep them straight with the miter gauge, I couldn't do it from over there. And I wanted to keep the same setup for the smaller ones, which wouldn't fit over there either. So I worked up this little rig here where I've got two roller bars here with just a piece of plywood in the middle to roll along with. And the idea is that as I push this side along here along the router bit, this part just rolls right along with me, back and forth. Let's see how that works. Worked right up to the very end, which is really all I needed. Now I'm setting up to route the grooves to put the slats in. I've got a piece of tape here lined up with the bit. That way I can drop it in right with the lap joint and route it that way. And then when I get to the next lap joint, I can lift it out. The reason we want to do it that way is because if you route all the way through, when you put the piece together, you're going to end up with an opening here. So the vertical pieces, the stiles, and the tops and bottoms of the rails, the horizontal pieces, are going to need only one groove. But the middle stile is going to need grooves on both sides. So we'll do that first. In order to get a nice centered groove where everything matches up all the way around, we push it through one side first, keeping that same side down. We flip it around and run it through again. That'll make everything nice and centered so it meets up. I'm sure many of you are wondering why I chose to use a half lap joint instead of butting them up together and screwing them like that, or cutting some kind of mortise and tenon. Well, these are much easier and faster than doing a mortise and tenon, but I get a lot of the same benefits out of it, whereas the shoulders here and on this side work together to prevent any type of sag without worrying about cross bracing or turnbuckles. Putting them just like this with some fasteners in there, that's going to sag over time. Those fasteners are going to give away, the wood's going to give away. This gives me much more meat down here and on the back on this joint here, where they can register against one another and hold each other square. There's a bunch of different ways to cut these half lap joints. You could set up a dado stack on the table saw and run it over that way. My table saw has a tendency to drop, and I can't count on the depth of the cut here, the height of the blade. So I did it over on the router table. Now you could just take a router and route it out this way by hand as well. Or if I had a really good sharp saw, hand saw, I probably would have been much faster to just saw down this way and then cut in this way. And just take all that wood out that way. That would probably been much faster, but I don't have a good hand saw to do that with. So now it's just a matter of getting the size of these slats and getting them cut down. These dog-eared fence slats are going to make up the panel of my doors. Though they've been sitting in my garage here for about the past 3-4 months, they still may shrink a bit out in the weather. So what I've done is I've routed the rabbet on each side of the slat. That way they nestle together, and as they shrink, there may be some separation between them, but you won't be able to see any gaps, hopefully. That said, I don't really want the dog ears on there, and they're probably too long for what I need anyway, so I will be cutting off the dog ear ends. So here they are, propped up against my garage door. They're okay. There's some things I'd rather do differently. What I didn't do is put everything through the jointer and the planer, so some of these boards were not quite as the right dimensions as the other boards, so I'm getting some gaps here. Where this board wasn't quite as big as this board. So if I'd done all the milling properly, everything would have been the same size. But I wanted the rounded edges and everything. You can kind of give it that rustic look. So, you know, I guess it's just more rustic. Hashtag more rustic. Also here, I didn't go out far enough with my dados for the grooves around. So I had to notch out some areas here. That's a place where bees can get into the shed, which is what I'm trying to prevent. So I'll probably have to go back in there with some clear silicone and seal that up. Everything looks good, so I'll probably hit some silicone here and here, maybe down in the front here to keep some of the rain from getting down and just sitting in that well of the groove down here where all the slats are in. I think when I grabbed the wood from the pile, from the bin, there was some regular old fur that got stuck in there. I didn't realize it till like just now. So I'm going to have to find some way to treat that so that it doesn't rot before the rest of the doors. Or I just let it rot and rebuild the doors, correct the mistakes that I've made. Whew, so we got those shed doors built. Now we've got to put them up. But that's a completely different video. If you want to see that video, make sure you subscribe down below and hit the little notification so you know when I release that video. If you really like this video, give me a thumbs up. And be sure if you know anyone who has a shed and may need doors, maybe you want to share this video with them. Alright? So I'll see you later in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.